Hi class, my name is Sarah. I'm currently studying education because I want to create a safe space for students, regardless of their race, background, disabilities, regardless of anything. I want them to feel safe, respected, and valued. Growing up, I saw how racism can impact the educational experience, both in subtle and overt ways. As a future educator, I feel like it's not only my responsibility to create an inclusive classroom, but also fight against racism in our educational system. Fighting racism in school is important to me because every student deserves a fair chance to succeed, free from prejudice and discrimination. So, racism in schools, how can you fight it? In that video, the youth talked about how it was important to speak up against racism. They explained that by staying silent is just as bad as committing it almost. You know what I mean? You didn't say it, but you're letting it happen. So even small little things like pointing out how unfair comments are or just supporting classmates in the slightest can make a huge difference. They emphasize that using your voice doesn't always mean confrontation. You don't always have to start a fight. It can be subtle. It can be as simple as asking questions or talking to teachers and admin about issues at the school. The youth also highlighted that speaking up can empower both the person speaking and others who may feel afraid or alone. It helps create a school environment where racism is not accepted, and using your voice is the best way to start. So the video also inspired me because they had proactive attitudes. They weren't afraid to challenge school rules or authority. Their willingness to speak up and fight for a change show me how important it is to take action, even when it's difficult. This made me think about how, as a future educator, I can challenge unfair policies and create a safe, inclusive environment. So, in chapter 36 of the text, I don't know if I'm saying that right, text, the focus on advocating for equity and justice in schools matches my approach to fighting racism. The chapter talks about the importance of supporting marginalized voices and pushing for changes in school systems that continue to let racism be allowed. This is exactly what the youth in Racism of Schools video did. They didn't just speak out against acts of racism, but they challenged the systems that allowed it. As a future educator, I believe it's important to give a voice to students who are often overlooked. By pushing for changes in policies, curriculum, and resources, I can help create a more fair and inclusive school environment, just like the youth in the video showed us. So, connecting back to chapter 39, it's just super important to speak up when you see racism. Like I said before, staying silent is a problem. It's about standing up for students who face discrimination and created safe spaces. Chapter 39 emphasizes the importance of an inclusive classroom where every student feels valued and respected. Okay, educating yourself and others. So, reading about racial injustice and just staying aware of what's going on. Sharing anti-racist resources like some of the cool different websites we learned about in this class, and engaging in conversations that educate others on the impacts of racism. I mean, we need to talk about it. The more we talk about it, the more it gets around. Connection to personal experience. So, with school and teachers and administrators, they need to create policies that address racial disparities such as zero tolerance. Anytime there's an issue or a stereotype or a microaggression, we need to have, it needs to be documented, and it has to be found as harassment. I mean, all these little microaggressions, they can't slide. Let's just like nip it in the butt right in the beginning. So connecting to the Black Panthers doc. So the Black Panthers, they're awesome because they didn't just speak up against racial inequality. They took bold action. Like, they straight showed up with guns. They took bold action, pushing for real world changes such as community programs, better access to education, and changing unfair laws. Similarly, these strategies challenge the system that allows racism to persist in schools. By standing up against discriminatory practices, demanding inclusive curriculum, and advocating for marginalized voices, we are not just speaking against racism, but we're actively working to change the systems that support it. So, like the Black Panthers, these acts of resistance are about creating a lasting change through bold, direct action. So, going back to chapter 36, the chapter highlights how resistance in education, whether by challenging discriminatory curriculums or questioning unjust practices, can push for broader social justice. The strategies I mentioned aligned with these goals by directly confronting systems of oppression in schools. Just like the Black Panthers, let's push for systematic change. These strategies aim to dismantle the structures that allow racism to thrive in education. As a student and a future educator, I recognize that fighting racism in schools is not just a one-time effort, but a continuous process. It's about constantly learning, unlearning, which sometimes is harder than learning, and adapting our approaches to be more inclusive, more just, and more aware of the ways in which racism manifests in the classroom and beyond. These strategies I've discussed today, actively advocating for marginalized students, educating myself and others, and pushing for institutional change, are just the beginning. They are part of a larger movement to create schools where every student feels seen, valued, and empowered, regardless of their race and background. Let's commit to making this happen together. Let's change the world.